Okay, yay. So I am here with Lisa,
Mhm.
who is going to share with us from your naturopathic capacity. Yes, tell us what exactly you are. You're a naturopathic doctor, is that right?
Well, I was. Um, yeah, have been a naturopath for like almost 25 years as my career. Um, but my life was put on hold just over a year ago, and I have uh, let go of that idea for a while. And I'm okay with that. But I like my whole became chronically ill in my teens and went searching for answers and went through the whole naturopathic and wellness and mental space and emotional space and somatic space, and then have sort of I've arrived like 40 years later to this new place that I have never been in before. So that's
So here we are,
here we are.
always in the new place, and I'm grateful for all of the journey that brought our lives together. And Little Socks is joining us.
Mhm.
And I'm so grateful that Socks is with us today. Socks is like the cutest ever.
Even without both socks, she's here.
You know what? That is the energy that I want to bring to this space. Unprepared, one sock on, me with my poor lighting because I can't do lighting.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're just all here the way we can be here.
Yeah.
I love that so much. So the reason why I asked you to do this was because I have just finished the rest and restore protocol. You have just begun it. And
Yep.
I was trying to describe how I was having this like reverse chronological order of physical symptoms
Yeah.
popping up. And you were like, oh, that's Herring's Law of Cure. And I was like, I'm sorry, what? So, yeah, tell us a little bit about that if you'd be willing.
Yeah, well, from what I remember, that's sort of a core teaching I learned in naturopathic medical school. I believe it is homeopathic specific.
That's what
And
I
so,
got from what I looked at. Yeah.
yeah, so Herring was a homeopath. And it was just the idea that you have, well, not two options, I guess, but for simplicity, it's like you're either band-aiding
Mm-hmm.
uh, a symptom, you could make it worse and
Mm-hmm.
you could get better. You could band-aid or you could heal. And for me, healing is like there's a return to wholeness.
We froze.
Am I frozen?
Yeah, but I can still hear you. So can you still hear me in regular timing?
Am I back?
Yeah. Now your video's gone, but I
I
could
turned
hear
it.
you the whole time. So could you hear me the whole time?
No.
Okay. I wonder what it'll record then, because I could hear you the whole time. Well, let's just keep going. We'll see what
Yeah.
happens.
So,
Say a
and
little
this is
thank
something,
you to the computers. Thank you to
thank
the
you.
connection.
Thank you for doing what you can.
Yes. A little time for a little breath, a little check-in. I actually love that computers have their own little process. Hmm. Hmm. Okay, what we'll do is pause. Okay, we are back and we'll see how long we're back for.
Yeah.
Okay,
Uh,
so you were talking about band-aid versus cure, maybe, or maybe you were using the word heal.
um, I just in my head prefer heal versus cure because
Yeah.
cure sounds like there's a bunch of ego in there, but the
Mm.
healing, and it was something that in my practice was important to tell people because sometimes when you are healing, you get worse. And right, because you break a bone, it doesn't hurt as at first, but
Yeah.
all the inflammation, all that stuff's going to come in, and there's going to be more pain on
Ah,
the way to the healed bone. And so with Herring's law of cure, it's a way to it was a way that I could prepare people of like when we apply something, because everybody's like, oh, when I apply it and it's the right thing, I'll get better. I'll feel better. And that's
ah,
not necessarily the case. But Herring's law of cure gives you a little bit of a map that when you are actually moving towards wholeness, healing in that sort of sense, is that there's going to be a certain way that happens so that you can tell what's happening. And there is a rewind through the most recent symptom to the first symptom that you had through the body and from the top down. So, like eczema would heal from the face down towards the bottom of the body. And then from the inside out, I believe is the
yep.
third.
Yes.
And so your skin would also be the last thing to heal, which is
Mm,
huge because a lot of people have skin stuff and they're like, it's just not changing, but there's a whole, it'll be the last thing always to go.
yeah. Yeah. And then
Yeah.
I think the other thing that I saw was like least like vital organ, like
Yeah.
most vital organ to least or something like that.
So again, like the skin is your least vital organ. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Wow. Wow. So crazy.
Yeah. And then the other thing too is because okay, now we can track like what's actually happening so I don't have to freak out that I'm getting worse. And there is, in a sense, I think, because right, we don't, it's like, well, if that's the case, I don't actually want to re-experience all
Yeah.
those things
I
again.
did not. Yeah.
And there is, in a way, even if you knew it, it's like, okay, I can logically know that, and I still don't want to go back to that place. So I think there is a way, what I'm experiencing right now with the homeopathy I'm doing for my health condition is that there is a way to control the pace so
Okay.
that it's very doable. And but again, you have this map of like, oh, this is coming back up again because I'm moving in the right direction, not the wrong direction. But
Right.
it
It's a reassurance.
doesn't have to be, I think the other quality of Herring's law is it doesn't have to be as intense as it was the first time,
Hmm.
but you will travel back through it.
Okay. Yeah, that matches my experience. And I'm really glad that you said pacing because certainly my pacing with the rest and restore protocol was way too fast. Like I just, I came into it thinking, oh, I'm just going to do this so that I can feel confident giving it to other people and I don't have any problems that I'm trying to resolve. And then clearly my body did have some things that it was still waiting to resolve. And so pacing feels like it could have made it far less
Yeah.
um like upsetting and disruptive.
Yeah.
And knowing that I could expect to see some of these things float back through would have been reassuring rather than scary. Because I was kind of like, how is this possible? And it was definitely less dramatic. So, like, I used to get huge migraines that were like 4 hours long, I mean, 4 days long. But I would get tingling around my mouth and nose and some visual auras before they would come. And so I started having that and had a mild headache. And I was like, gotta be fucking kidding me. Like, I was like, I'm not going back there. And then I did not get a full migraine.
Yeah.
So that lines up. My
Scary.
question, yeah, it was upsetting. I was because that was very disruptive to my life. Like that's why I was really considering like not being able to work and going on disability and stuff because it was like every single month they were 4 days long. And when they weren't like full on, they were present. um, but I'm curious about because now I'm like 2 weeks out and things seem to be unraveling backwards with both the way that I'm eating and digestion and psychologically like my old coping mechanism psychologically i'm like going back through those less intense but still terrifying because one of my oldest coping mechanisms was self-harm
Mm,
and suicidal thinking.
mhm.
And the self-harm urges came back and the suicidal thinking came back. And I was like, oh my gosh, am I having to go backwards through the psychological coping mechanisms as
Yeah.
well? Do you have any thoughts about that?
Yeah, I think you can. And at the same time, um, on that track is that again, you're going through it. It's not the same as it was the first time. There's more vitality elsewhere in the life. So you've got some other anchors for that. And then I think too, for me is, this is metaphorical, but there's like that last hurrah of the coping mechanisms, and they just sort of want to come back and have their last little party.
Yeah.
And I would experience, I don't think this is that situation, but I experienced that a lot, especially it's like, the Last Supper. It's like if I don't ever get to eat gluten anymore, it's like, so this is on its way out and it's going to have its little,
Oh,
see, I just got goosebumps.
me too. Did you see me? My whole body. Ooh. Oh my gosh. Wow.
Yeah.
Ooh. And what I think is really interesting that Unite is not talking about at all, but that I feel like perhaps they will as they continue to trial this and get people's feedback, is that going to a true rest and digest is something very radical
Yes.
for the body that I doubt I've experienced since, like, I don't know, maybe when I was in the womb.
Yep.
Because if I think back, my birth was very traumatic. And the story is that everyone was screaming, everyone was running around, I was suffocating and having a seizure, and there was emergency, emergency, emergency. So I came into a very like
Hmm.
fight flight moment.
Hmm.
And I imagined that, being like braced for that very likely could be my whole experience. And the dorsal being like, there's safe rest digest dorsal and there's fear-based dorsal, like we're braced and hiding and ready. I feel like perhaps I've always done just the fear dorsal.
Yeah.
And so to connect with the true rest digest is like really radical for my body.
It's really radical, and the nervous system experiences that as like when your nervous system actually softens, like I'm not braced anymore, I'm not going to be ready. And so it feels dangerous,
Super dangerous.
feels dangerous. And I used to do that with, I played around with heart math for a while. One of
Yeah.
the things I did in practice. And when you just, you hook yourself up and you do the breathing and you come, and I had it on the computer screen and we could see their body come into coherence. And the people who lived in brace would almost have a panic attack
Yeah.
because being calm was a threat. It was very dangerous to feel calm. And so that makes sense from that angle too.
So all those ways in which my body and mind created,
Protection.
yeah, are unraveling.
Yeah.
Ooh. So it's always, things are never what you expect them to be. I was experiencing the way that Unite put out the RRP and the way that the training was, that it's like less intensity, it's just more about the body. Like we can just let people do it.
Yeah.
But now I'm
Well, it's
feeling
their
like,
paradigm, right? Their more conventional paradigm, which is interesting because they work with very sensitive bodies.
yeah, yeah, wow. So it may be that, the thing that I'm still trying to navigate is that to get into that true like rest digest like connection with the interoception, like I'm just really connected with my experience of being in this body, is a very individual experience.
Yeah.
And I'm not sure that like it would make sense to do this listening with me present or with a provider present, because it feels like it's really about cultivating that like by myself I am a source to self, like I create my own safety in my body.
Mhm.
um
I think the having the understanding and the touch points along the way of this is what to expect and this is what's happening. The other good example of like when you're bringing the nervous system back to safety and it doesn't understand that, so it means it's now unprotected. It's kind of the same experience if you lived in the middle of New York City and then you moved out to the country and like New York City is full of frenetic noise all the time, and that's where the body lives. And then you move out to the country and it's silent, and that feels awful. And
yeah,
then you just have to get used to living in the country, and then the country feels good,
yeah,
you know,
yeah,
comes the preference. But it is a changing of states that
yeah,
you,
yeah. So I think you're right that like doing a lot more upfront around like this is what may show up, and really encouraging people to go at a slow pace.
and in between, because my experience in practice and then my experience right now with our RRP is you told me everything and I forgot it all. So it's like, you
Lots
got
of
to be
reminders.
reminded, especially when you go into like terror about a symptom. It's like you got to be reminded of what's actually
Yeah. Yeah, I'm gonna note that down to so to have the consistent reminders about what might be happening, what to expect. Yeah. Isn't it fascinating?
yeah.
Mm. So is there anything else that when you think about these concepts of both the like Hering's law and the what happens when you truly relax and you get that protective mechanism, is there anything else that you feel like I don't have information about that people would be supported by knowing?
I mean, I don't know that you don't have it, but you know, I would say for me, seeing my nervous system come online again and being able to experience life has been, um, I couldn't have done it until I did it.
Yeah.
And so, like I was all the things, the all the things that I felt like I was a failure at or that I felt invalidated by for people, um, it now makes sense. And it could not have made sense when my nervous system was in the state that it was. And so that's a very wild experience to, I wasn't to blame, they weren't to blame. Like it just, that first experience of like, it was one of the most painful things in my life was I do not feel connected to people or life. And nobody could, like I had said to you, is like I think people are like faking it. Like they're
Yeah.
just pretending that
Yeah.
they like each other and they're connected and this is fun. And I spent 40 years trying to fix myself.
Yeah.
And it was 6 years ago that somebody else redirected me sort of out of that fix sick toxic wellness. Something's wrong with me. I'm broken. I have to be fixed. And it's taken me 6 years to get here. So it was all, and I used to even not very long ago sit in the space of it's not fair that it took me this long and so much of my life was wasted. And now I can sit in the place that I would have rolled my eyes at and being
Yeah.
like, it all had to happen.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
like, I can't, and now I want to download that to everybody, but I can't.
Right. That grace of like, there's nothing wrong. There's no waste. You didn't do it wrong. Nobody else did it wrong. Like you can't until you can. And the experience of not being able to is as valuable as the experience of being able to. Yeah, I so appreciate you bringing that into this conversation because I am very much there with you as well. Certainly that like that piece of like, what is this? Why can't I like am I not experiencing the things I think I should be? That is probably the most painful of all of the things.
Something's wrong with me. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
Nothing. There's nothing wrong.
yeah, yeah,
And I think the most painful is like, why did it take 40 years?
yeah.
Like, because now there's 20 somethings coming up and SSP and RRP is here and
uh
bar and they get it. They get it
right.
at like, why
Yeah,
didn't I get it at 20? And that doesn't feel painful anymore to me because I needed the experience of things that weren't relevant to not be working in order for me
yes.
to accept and redirect. So,
Mm,
yeah.
thank you for sharing that. Yeah. That's a beautiful place, I think, to finish. Is there anything else that you wanted to share?
No, I don't think so.
Thank you so much for your generosity. I'm so grateful, even in this way, how like you were the one that I was sharing those experiences with, because I very much was considering not sharing the RRP with people because I felt like, well, this is fucking awful. I'm not going to make people worse. So this is so helpful, and thank you for being willing to talk about it. And I'm just going to stop the recording and then we can have a minute to connect.
Mhm.